Is there a left is there a left anti-Semitism, as there used not to be? Anti-Semitism was so much the weapon of the right and of counter-revolution. Lenin said himself, anti-Semitism is counter-revolution. That you would never have thought, or I would not have expected to see the day, when on supposedly liberal websites available in California, there would be stories about Israel stealing body parts for the market. That's almost a precise replication of the Passover plot. I didn't expect to see that. I didn't expect to see in my home country leading leftist members of parliament and activists making common cause with the Muslim Brotherhood, with Islamic Jihad, with the people, the protocols. I would have thought it was unthinkable, but it's not. And given the immense contribution that the Jewish people have made to the liberal left in every society, this seems to me almost the most painful of the insults that this prejudice is currently hurling against us. I take it, shall I say, a bit more personally than some of the others. I'm used to it from Mosley. I don't care. I don't care about it from Jean-Marie Le Pen. I expect it from him. I hate its spread on campus and on the left, and it really needs to be fought without pity wherever it shows itself there. Can an anti-Semite make a true statement? Sometimes. The Reverend Bailey Smith, Jerry Falwell's sidekick, once said, "Almighty God doesn't hear the prayers of a Jew." As far as my investigations go, that statement is confirmed. I think it's the only one I've been able to find that is anti-Jewish in intention but factually true in statement. Can anti-Semitism be amusing? To a limited extent, but an indispensable extent, yes. You perhaps know the story of Abe and Solomon walking along together, and they see a church with a big sign that says, Jews for Jesus. $1,000 to any Jew who converts, who joins. And Abe takes a look and he says, I'm going to go in, I'm going to try it. Solomon says, should I wait for you? He said, yeah, if you like. About an hour passes, Abe comes out. Solomon says, so? Abe said, no, I'm a Christian now. I see that point. I'm with Jesus. I'm saved. And Solomon says, well, what, did they give you the $1,000 up front? And Abe says, is that all you people ever think about? So it can be funny. Can you suffer from anti-Semitism mildly? That's my question to Mel Gibson. With most people, it's impossible to have it a little bit. It takes over everything else. It sucks out all the oxygen in what's left of your brain and your system, and it becomes dominant. Can it be mild? As a matter of fact, I think it can. I mean, I've known two people of whom I think this is true. My beloved friend Martin Amis wrote very amusingly about his father Kingsley, who in late life became a bit of a curmudgeon. And he said to his dad once, Dad, what is this? What's it like being a mild anti-Semite? And his father said, oh, it's all right. He said, it's when I'm watching the credits at the end of a film and I think, oh, there goes another one. And another one. Well, I can just assure you, the old man, he became a bit of a bore towards the end of his life. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He certainly wouldn't hurt a Jew or have it done. So in some way, I think I'm being optimistic. It is a prejudice that can be domesticated, if you like, brought under control, repressed a bit. My ex-friend, Gore Vidal, once got a bad review in the New Republic for his novel Lincoln. And the reviewer was Thomas Keneally, who I don't need to tell you about, the author of Schindler's List. And it wasn't as good a review as Gore thought he should have got. Or, as a matter of fact, as good a review as I would have given it. I think Lincoln is a wonderful novel. But Thomas Keneally got a letter from Gore Vidal saying, I see that the Jews cast around for someone who was reliably anti-me and made sure that the ancient tribe was vindicated in your poor notice of my novel. Keneally has the letter. Terribly depressing. I mean, so petty, so cheap, so nasty, so deliberately hurtful, but not frightening. Contemptible, not frightening. Don't make a federal case every time, I say to the ADL. You have to be able to tell what's dangerous, what's wicked, what's toxic from what isn't. Is monotheism anti-Semitic? Yes. At least two-thirds of it is, more or less by definition. The other, and that in numbers, that means a lot of people. The two that are plagiarized from Judaism, from the worst bits of Judaism, I would add. Why do I say this? Because any real Christian, any serious believing Christian, would give everything he owned to have a personal meeting with Jesus of Nazareth. Nothing more could be desired than that moment. They yearn for it, they thirst for it, they hunger for it. No serious Muslim could want anything more than to have met himself with the messenger of God, with the Prophet Muhammad. Well, there were no Ukrainians around at that time. There were no Poles at the crucifixion. There were no Irish people in Mecca and Medina. There was only one people that's still around that met both these impostors and said, no sale, don't believe it. Do you think that's ever going to be forgiven? Of course it's not. Of course it'll never be forgiven. They saw Jesus of Nazareth and they spat in his face. They saw the Prophet Muhammad and they said, this guy's just a warlord. And of Jesus they said, he's just a crackpot rabbi and also a great blasphemer. And Maimonides says, one of his sharper passages, our sages never did a better thing than when they got rid of that rabble-rousing impostor. Well, makes you proud, I hope. You shouldn't want to be forgiven for getting a thing like that right. But don't go to any mushy ecumenical outreach meetings with these people. It's a waste of time. My related question, can anti-Semitism, should it ever be considered flattering? Yes, I think so. The case that convinced Herzl that the Jews should leave Europe, the case of Colonel Alfred Dreyfus, led, after convulsing and splitting France and French society and culture, to the coinage of the term intellectual to describe the pro-Dreyfusard faction. It was a term of contempt coined by the Action Française, the extreme anti-Semitic right party, by the Catholic Church, and by the bigots of the French army. Intellectual meant someone who was fundamentally unsound, who had no proper blood and soil connection with the organic society of France, who had no loyalties except to the mind and to inquiry, who was a doubter. I hope that word intellectual never loses its association with those wonderful things. And to that extent, it's a product of the struggle against anti-Semitism, which is very much a projection of precisely that conservative pathology. It was Charles Maurras, the founder of Action Française, T.S. Eliot's favorite philosopher, favorite politician, who, when he was finally jailed after the war for collaboration with the Nazis, as he was leaving the dock, was heard to say, "Enfin, c'est la revanche de Dreyfus." Dreyfus is vindicated. Yeah, he was right. And it was Eliot, the admirer of Maurras, who in his lecture not long after, at the University of Virginia, famous lecture, After Strange Gods, did not say that a healthy society should not have too many Jews in it. He's often quoted as saying that. He didn't say that. He said a too large number of free-thinking Jews is undesirable for a healthy, organic society. Well, from Eliot's Catholic fascist point of view, that's quite right. And it's the hope not just of Jews, but of many others, that the free-thinking part prevails and that the bigotry does not. Rebecca West, in her wonderful book, I hope you've all read Black Lamb, Grey Falcon, Journey Through the Balkans, just as Nazism is beginning to get going in pre-war Europe, looking at the fractured, feudal, backward societies of what was then a sort of Yugoslavia, says, I quote directly, "Many primitive peoples must receive their first intimation of the toxic quality of thought from Jews. They know only the fortifying idea of religion. They see in Jews the effect of the tormenting and disintegrative idea of skepticism." And you think about what happened to Catholic Croatia, the organic, stable, millennial, unchanging society. The woman knew her place, the priest knew what the priest was where everyone took their problems, the children were raised in the fear, the real fear of the risen Christ and all outsiders were considered to be vile. Imagine, and then know what happened. She had it absolutely right. Jews aren't going to be forgiven for troubling the sleep of the peasantry and the feudal types who want to keep them that way. And nor should they want to be forgiven for it. They should be proud of the association. Here is Jacobo Timmerman, who I'm proud to say was my friend, the Argentine editor, kidnapped editor of La Opinión in Buenos Aires in the 70s by the death squads and tortured in a secret prison, about which he wrote a marvelous memoir that, again, I hope you've all read, Prisoner Without a Name, Cell Without a Number. Here's what his interrogator said to him between blows of the cattle prod. He said, Argentina has three main enemies. Karl Marx, because he tried to destroy the Christian concept of society. Sigmund Freud, because he tried to destroy the Christian concept of the family. And Albert Einstein, because he tried to destroy the Christian concept of time and space. That should make you proud too, isn't it? I mean, none of those names are Irish. Victor Klemperer, final recommendation, if you have not read Victor Klemperer's Diaries of the Third Reich, every day between 1933 and 1945, you should. Don't start them late at night. You will not get to bed. Imperishable. The Winston Smith of Hitler's Europe. He had a friend, he minutes him, who said to Victor, you know, the Jews, we Jews, are a seismic people. A seismic people. It's an arresting phrase. Victor Klemperer hated being a Jew. He'd converted to Protestantism. He wrote incredibly disobligingly about Theodor Herzl. He would never go near a synagogue. But he was seismic in two senses. He could feel it coming, and he wrote an entry every day about what was coming to Germany and the amazing premonitions that he experienced. But seismic in another way, in the Jews of Europe, in having their own version of the Enlightenment, the Haskalah, named for the mind itself, and contributing so mightily on every front, from psychiatry to physics, to everybody else's enlightenment too. Don't think that's going to be forgiven. My friend Lawrence Krauss, Larry Krauss, I think the greatest living physicist apart from Stephen Hawking, gave a talk recently, which you can look up. It's called A Whole Universe from Nothing. It's about the quantum theory, it's about the cosmos, it's about the Big Bang, and it's about the rather wonderful fact that everyone sitting here is made out of elements that were once stardust. Cheers you up in a way. And he said, and I know he did it on purpose, he said, so forget Jesus dying for you, he says to the audience. Millions of stars had to die before you could be born. Do you want to have a look at his mailbag? I know you do. And you know exactly what will have been said about a physicist who has not accepted Jesus Christ as his personal savior. I'm coming to the close of my remarks, and I hope I haven't overrun my time too much. And you've been very generous, but there's a very cryptic but I think profound sentence in Leo Strauss's 1962 essay, Why We Remain Jewish. And I'll again quote directly from Leo Strauss's conclusion. He says, the Jewish people and their fate are the living witness for the absence of redemption. This, one could say, is the meaning of the chosen people. The Jews are chosen to prove the absence of redemption. Now, if I had to pick any one special trope of Judaism or the Jewish personality or character, I think I would pick irony. No other religion has a prophet like Maimonides who says, yes, the Messiah will come, but he may tarry. There are no Woody Allen theologians in Christianity who would say things like that. For all the fetishization in Judaism of unleavened bread, the Jewish people have in fact been the yeast in an enormous number of societies and countries, the leaven in the lump. Benny Morris's new book on the origins of the Israeli-Palestine crisis quotes one of the Mufti's people writing from the Imam's headquarters in Jerusalem to the British saying, you can't be bringing Jews into this country. They're all subversives. It's nothing but trouble. Again, take the compliments where you can get them. So, natural disturbers of the natural order. Everything was fine. Every peasant knew to expect only one meal a day. Everyone knew who owned what and where. Everyone obeyed the priests and the mullahs. But now look, these scrofulous troublemakers from Poland and Latvia. Rabbi Tarfon was a great hater of Christians and an even greater hatred of, had an even greater hatred of Jewish heretics. And I've always thought it's wonderful that the word for a Jewish heretic, or the Jewish word for heretic, is apikuros, follower of Epicurus, student of Greek. That's a nice way to be called a heretic. Anyway, I'm not a great admirer of Rabbi Tarfon, but he had it right when he said, he echoes Strauss in a way, when he says, you are not obliged to complete the task, but neither are you free to give it up or to evade it. To be Jewish is to be involved in a continual struggle, a continual test, to be at continual risk, to be always aware of anxiety and danger and angst. Just as there could be, despite the best efforts of its enemies, no final solution to the so-called Jewish problem, Jewish question in Europe, so one has to say there's no ultimate security or salvation for the Jewish people or any other. More and more, for example, to me, Israel begins to resemble a part of the diaspora, not a solution to it or an alternative to it, just one other place where a large number of Jewish people live in great insecurity and constant doubt. Jews will always continue to be identified as malcontents, doubters, unsound, cosmopolitan, and yes, if you like, rootless. And I'll close by saying this. Because anti-Semitism is the godfather of racism and the gateway to tyranny and fascism and war, it is to be regarded not as the enemy of the Jewish people alone, but as the common enemy of humanity and of civilization, and has to be fought against very tenaciously for that reason, most especially in its current, most virulent form of Islamic jihad. Daniel Pearl's revolting murderer was educated at the London School of Economics. Our Christmas bomber over Detroit was from a neighboring London college, the chair of the Islamic Student Society. Many pogroms against Jewish people are being reported from all over Europe today as I'm talking. And we can only expect this to get worse, and we must make sure our own defenses are not neglected. Our task is to call this filthy thing, this plague, this pest, by its right name, to make unceasing resistance to it, knowing all the time that it's probably ultimately ineradicable, and bearing in mind that its hatred towards us is a compliment, and resolving some of the time at any rate to do a bit more to deserve it. Thank you.